Apple has recently updated their keyboard and mouse section of their iMac lineup, and the most exciting one for me is the extremely overpriced, well, maybe not overpriced, just expensive, but it's got an Apple logo on it. What do you expect? The Magic Trackpad 2. The key selling point with this trackpad opposed to the last one is Force Touch, and as long as you have a Bluetooth 4.0 enabled Mac, as well as OS X El Capitan running on it, you should be good. So you don't need just the newest and greatest, latest iMac. This can run on just about all current day Macs. Mine hooked up right up to my 4-year-old iMac. It's a little guy, he's still pulling it, and you're doing great. And all of the Force Touch capabilities were active. So Force Touch is sneaking its way into Apple's products, just about all of them now. And it's kind of building on top of right click for touch enabled things. It adds another literal depth to clicking. So for instance, if you're in Safari and you see a word you don't understand, you force click and then boom, all of this information pops up, a Wikipedia entry, dictionary opening page. It's really handy anytime there's a word you don't understand. And that's just one. If you're managing all your file storage and you have a bunch of folders full of things like I do, you can force click on any one of those folders and you get this pop-up to see how many items are in there and how much memory it's taking up, which for me saves a whole lot of time, opposed to going in and finding the properties about each one. That's handy. And when you're searching through QuickTime files and you want to fast forward through some footage, this is when it really gets interesting. The harder you press on that trackpad determines how fast you're scrubbing through the video. And that's really when you see how many different readings it can measure. It's not just regular click and force click. There's like 6 different increments, and you can get really precise with it. Whether you want to go 2 times as fast or 30 times as fast, you can communicate that with the computer, and that you cannot do with a mouse. And Force Touch is great for lots of other things, but I want to get into something also very handy: multi-touch gestures. So firstly, it's much bigger than the last generation trackpad, so you get plenty of space and plenty of precision when you're scrolling through pages to get tiny little increments that I think I can say you can't get with a Magic Mouse or any mouse ever. This is as precise as it gets. But of course, it's not just scrolling. There's way more other stuff, one of which they borrowed from the iOS iPad lineup, which is when you swipe up with 4 fingers, you get to see all the windows you have open as well as other desktops. And with those 4 fingers, you can swipe between desktops, and that makes organizing all of those windows you got up way easier. I really wasn't using that function very much until I got the trackpad, and that saved me a ton of time. Another underrated feature that's there without the trackpad, but you don't really notice it, is Notification Center. Yeah, Macs have notification centers. They were always there, but you had to click the button up in the taskbar, and that just usually wasn't what everyone felt like doing. Sure, it's easy, but I mean, it's all the way up there. Don't make me reach up there. But with the trackpad, you can take 2 fingers and swipe from the right side of it, and then it shows up on whatever monitor you're using at the time. And it's not set widgets. You can get customizable ones from the App Store, and a lot of people just don't know they're there, and I think it's really helpful. You can look at stocks, notifications, control your music library, and I put in a calculator in there, which is helpful for like math and homework and whatever you do with math. You can get the weather and the stock prices. That's just a really handy feature that feels to go hand in hand with iOS, and I love it when products have a similar style with each other, and I think that's great. And as always, there's tons of other stuff you can do with multi-touch gestures, but I want to get on into something else, which is how much nicer it is to not have AA batteries and be able to charge it with a lightning cord, which is included, I would hope, because it's expensive. The battery easily lasts you a month, and the charge time isn't even anything. It's like 2 to maybe 4 hours. So whenever it says it's low, just plug it in overnight or whenever. But one of the distinct advantages over the much hated upon Magic Mouse 2, so many people hate that thing, and I can understand why. I'll get into that later. But you can have this thing plugged in and charging and be using it at the same time, unlike the Magic Mouse 2. Since the charging port's on the front of it, you just plug it in. If you ever have that rare occasion when you're low on battery and you still need to be working, not very common, but it's still an option. That's so much nicer than having to unscrew it and drop in the AA's and having to buy AA's because most of us don't use them as much. I don't know about most of us. I just know I don't. And that's the future. And this is all about the future of tech. I love that feature, and I'm glad they went that route. So yeah, the Magic Mouse 2. You probably think I don't have a counter argument, that I have no excuse to why it's the worst thing Apple's made this year, and then I can't tell you why the design is so stupid, and whose freaking idea was it to raise the price, and that I can't explain all that. Yeah, you're right. Anyway, the Magic Trackpad 2 is great for using productivity apps like Adobe Photoshop or Premiere because you get to zoom in thing easily with those multi-touch gestures, which was much harder to do with a mouse. So I would recommend getting it for that purpose. But if you're a gamer, this is not gonna help much. Everyone knows if you're using a trackpad for gaming, that's a bad idea. Then again, you are on a Mac. If you're looking into buying this, you're using a Mac, and you do not use a Mac for gaming. I'm an Apple sheep, and I'm saying if you're a gamer, do not buy a Mac. Just everybody knows that. Come on, just accept it. Now the biggest stumper for most people and for most Apple customers in general. To no surprise, this is expensive. It's $130. Wow. Gosh, they never stop us. They never let us down there. This isn't one of those little upgrades you can do to make your old Mac feel a bit more current. It's a pretty big jump forward, but I can say if you can't afford it and you're willing to invest that much, it's definitely worth it. It expands your experience. It turns your Mac into a better product overall. But more importantly, if you're buying a new Mac anytime soon, in that checkout process, make sure you check the trackpad. That is if you're an editor or whatever, because that is so much nicer than this stupid Magic Mouse 2. I'm sorry. Don't ask me about that, because that's when you're really getting a savings, and I think it makes the Mac experience much better. This is your Apple Sheep here, and I will see you in the next one.